All right, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board, valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the need of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we're residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibilities entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. Thank you. With us this evening, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chairperson of the board. To my left, our vice chair, Joyce Leary Clark, and board member Jeff Brucho, and to my right, board member Jim Mollier. With that, we have a quorum this evening. Also with us this evening are our city staff members, Lisa Harmon, Shannon Chisholm, and Emily Cole-Press, our planner. Unfortunately, with us this evening, we don't have our city council liaison, Phil Hatch. He's not able to make it this evening. And we have board member Carrie Lynn Lane joining us as well this evening. Our first item on our agenda this evening is the review of our previous meeting minutes. We have a few draft meeting minutes here, along with some sidewalk notes. Our first is our draft meeting minutes from December 10th, 2024. Does any board members have any questions, comments, or edits on those?
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the December 10th draft meeting minutes as presented.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I was going to move to accept the draft minutes of the December 17th meeting as presented.
I will second.
Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the draft meeting minutes for December 17th, 2024? Those in favor? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Abstain?
Joyce?
I wasn't present at the site walk, so I need to abstain also.
You made a motion for the
Oh, I'm sorry.
17th.
I'm skipping ahead, the December 17th. Sorry, yes.
Yes. Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. So with that, we have our draft site walk notes from December 16th.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the site walk notes from December 16th for Peabody Lane as drafted.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt those notes? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
I was not there. I will abstain.
Joyce?
I'll abstain as well, as I wasn't present.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So the motion passes 3-0 with 2 abstentions. With that, our next item on the agenda this evening is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to come before the board and speak regarding planning-specific items. If anyone is here that would like to have some discussion or ask questions, please come before the board, state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them as appropriately. All right, seeing no one to participate, we will move to our next item. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the nomination and election of officers for the 2025 calendar year. If there are any board members that would like to make a nomination or a recommendation, Emily, we don't need to proceed in a specific order, do we?
No.
No, I didn't think so. So with that, we can move for a nomination for chairperson. We can start there.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to nominate you as the chair for the year 2025, and also nominate Joyce as the vice chair for 2025.
I would gladly second that motion.
Was that a motion or a nomination? Or is
I'll
it the
second the
same?
nomination.
Whatever it takes.
I'll third.
Thank you for the nomination, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion or reservations with that? Joyce, myself, I would.
I'll just note that I already checked with Matt ahead of time to make sure he was okay with this, so. We're not surprising him.
Thank you.
I'd just like to commend, I think the two of you have both, when you've had to run meetings, have done an outstanding job. And in my time serving with different boards or different leaders, I think we've done a great job making significant headway and progress in professionalism. And I think it'll greatly attributed by the two of you leading us. So I strongly support you.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate it. So with that, I would accept. Joyce, I would suspect you accept as well.
Yes.
So, Emily, did we do a formal motion and vote last time as well?
Yeah, so you usually handle them separately, and I would do that tonight because you're sitting 5, not 7. So I would handle each one as a separate, like, chair, election of chair and then election of vice chair as 2 separate motions.
Okay, great. That's exactly what I was going to suspect. So with that, could we have a motion for, we'll start with one, if we could.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would nominate Matt Frankel as the chair of the planning board for the 2025 calendar year.
Second.
All right, thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of the motion, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I guess I would accept, and I would vote in the affirmative as well. So motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I would move to nominate Joyce Leary Clark for the position of Vice Chair of the Planning Board for the 2025 calendar year.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to adopt Joyce as the vice chair for 2025. All right, with that, our next item on the agenda this evening is our Community Development Block Grant. And this is a request for a letter of support from the Planning Board. Do you have anything else to add on this, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received this request from Economic Development Department. Tracy Desjardins, our director, is here tonight if you have further questions. The grant is to support a business, Tan Bark Molded Fiber Products, which is operating at 34 Spring Hill Road, and is to help them purchase equipment and working capital. About $100,000 is the grant there. We provided some info on what Tan Bark does, as well as some news media coverage about the business. You also have here the template that Tracy and her team have provided. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this time? And I believe Tracy's with us this evening. If we have any additional questions or...
Mr.
Jim.
Chair? The only question I have, because I remember reading about the Tan Bark business, and it sounds fascinating, and it's a great business for Saco. The letter, though, that was drafted, I'm not sure I understand the very last sentence, because it looks like, I'm not sure if the sentence is saying that Matt, as the chair of the planning board, is assuring the city administrator that the project will meet local requiring permitting requirements and regulations, or, although I don't know if Matt knows all those regulations, or whether or not this proposal actually does meet all those regulations, or does that sentence say that that the project as presented will eventually meet all the local required permitting requirements and regulations? I'm not sure what that sentence means, or in this context, because I wouldn't want Matt signing a letter to something that suggesting that everything is fine, but it may not be.
Thank you, Jim. Go ahead, Emily.
So this is like a CDBG requirement, so we could certainly ask Tracy to come out and give you more info on that. It's really asking the board that they're all set with like this grant moving forward, and that they don't see any real red flags about permitting or requirements for that space. Staff did review this. I've been on site, and I've been inside the facility when they were opening up, so they are meeting the requirements as far as I'm aware.
Thank you, Emily. I had that same thought, Jim, is should maybe that one word be does or shall or must sort of thing, because it's sort of a...
Yeah, or, Mr. Chair, sorry,
Yes.
but, or, in my opinion, this project will meet the required, just so that you're offering an opinion, but you're not stating on behalf of the board that we've already done a thorough review and approved it.
Sure. So, Tracy, can you add anything to that? Because the project is, it's open and they're in production right now, so it's...
The project is basically they're purchasing equipment, and the grant is for them to hire 20 new employees. So the letter that you have is more of a template that the state uses. This is a little different. Most projects are usually construction-type projects where this is something different. So what you have is kind of a template. If you feel you want to make a couple of words changes, that's not going to, interfere with anything within the state. So we can do that. We can make some adjustments so it kind of fits, with what you want to do. I mean, it's just that. It's just a template that's sent out that everybody uses, and then we can tweak it to however we need to represent us.
Sure. I guess my first thought, and thoughts, Emily, as well, is that since the project is already up and running, it's an existing facility, perhaps that sentence there just gets adjusted to be as in a current tense, not that, it almost sounds like it's sort of a future.
And you can say for the expansion, that you're in support of their expansion, because that's basically what this is. It's an expansion.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts from board members? Jeff?
I just wanted to, disclose, I've never worked directly for them, but when they were in the process of moving in, there were some very technical electrical issues that I was kind of involved in looking at. Like I said, I've never been compensated by them, but in dealing with their controls engineer and the space that they have, I have to say it's a pretty impressive concept and design in what they're doing. I think it's a great attribute to our community, to our industrial park. Someplace that's actually using a relatively new building in a very neat, innovative way, meeting a lot of the goals that we have set forth in our comprehensive plan by kind of renewable. And they don't do any of the dirtier stuff. It's all shipped in as product from previous paper pulp fiber, and they're kind of doing the custom molding of it. So I thought it's a really neat industry that we've been steadily losing in our community. It's nice to have, or in southern Maine anyways, it's nice to have some growth there. So I'm very supportive, and it was very well thought out. They already knew when we were looking where additional lines of growth were going to be in this space. So, some startups can seem kind of a little off the fly a little bit. These guys seem like they were really well lined up. So I do have a question, though. Where it is a grant, we're not putting out any funds as a city other than your department's time and resources in assisting in filing this application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So with that, I would be in complete support of a positive recommendation to council, and I don't know if we could, maybe try to make it a little bit more than this, a little bit more word, a little more content. Like I said, the fact that it is renewable, very little, if no emissions at all. It's a very clean environment. And, any industry that can employ 20 additional people in our industrial park is a win. We have a lot of, existing large area buildings that with the change of use in our industrial park ends up employing very few people. And
If I may, Chair, also because it's a community development block grant, the new employees must meet guidelines, so they're all going to be the LMI, low to moderate income. So these jobs are going to be for those that are struggling and need work. And I'm working with them and looking at our new Mainers that are at the hotel as far as offering jobs.
so I guess with that additional information, if they meet certain requirements for the employment opportunity, where is their compensation package going to be in regards to the existing workforce? Do we know what that is?
So as part of that, it's kind of like follow through the state or whatever. I mean, they are guaranteeing X amount of funds. So, and that's kind of how the grant works. The idea of it is getting people jobs. I have to monitor. One of the things that I have to do is I have to meet with each person that they are going to hire, and I have to interview them and do, what are you making now? And to make sure that they meet within that income level that they need to, as far as to be eligible for this project. So it's all based upon that. It's a great program. I've been doing CDBG grants for over 20 years, and Saco is a community that doesn't fit a lot of the guidelines within the CDBG, is because that AMI is not low enough for those opportunities. But this development, this project, was able to meet it based upon the folks that they're looking to hire. So it's just it's a win-win for everybody.
Great, thank you. Jim?
Mr. Chair, would it be acceptable, this is a question directed to the CDBG director, but would it be acceptable if we change that last sentence to read, based upon representations of staff, the presented project will meet local required permitting requirements and regulations? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Because that takes the burden off of the chair here to sign something saying that everything is great when he can't possibly know if that's the case.
Correct.
Yeah, that sounds good. Could you hit that one more time for Emily?
Sure, and if it would be helpful, I could make a motion to that effect. So I'll move to change the last sentence of the proposed letter from the chair of the planning board to the city administrator. So that the last sentence reads, based upon representations of staff, comma, the presented project will meet local required permitting requirements and regulations.
I would second.
Great, thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional questions or thoughts from board members? All right, with that, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So we can make that amendment, Emily, and we can move forward. Great. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is just a brief review of our planning board public hearing guidelines. This is a document as part of the Saco Planning Board's standard operating procedures, if you would. Hard copies are printed in the back, and we can forward digital copies as well if anyone needs that. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. And with that, we will move into our applications for review and public hearings this evening. Our first item on this agenda is 88 Maple Street, map 52, lot 43. And this is a continued application of completeness review and public hearing for one additional dwelling unit. And this is a site plan and conditional use review within the medium-density residential zoning district. Anything to add, Shannon?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So since your last review of this project, additional application materials have been submitted. The checklists for both the site plan and conditional use application have been updated accordingly based on what has been received by the planning department since the last meeting. The waivers that were indicated in the initial application materials have been submitted and signed, so those are a part of your packet. Those waivers are for a standard boundary survey, a landscaping plan, and a lighting plan. There's also material included in your after-the-fact packet regarding traffic and parking on site. So our peer reviews, our city peer reviewer, Sewell, did review this project. They had some concerns about the angled parking that was proposed in the initial application materials. So the planning department and the code enforcement department met with the applicant on site today to review the parking that is currently existing and any potential future parking that could be added. There is an aerial overview in your after-the-fact packet that shows what is currently existing there today and what could be added in order to meet the off-site parking requirements for this location. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about those new materials. And the applicant is also here as well if you have any questions for them.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at this moment based on this information and some of the updated documents we have? All right, and we have the applicant with us this evening. Do you want to add anything to that, or this time just hang out for questions, or? Sure. All right, so board members, we have a lot of updated information here. Let's begin with, I guess, let's begin with the waivers, if we could. Any questions, concerns, thoughts from board members on any of these waivers?
Mr. Chair, I've reviewed all the material, and it appears to me that all three waivers make sense, and so if everyone else comes to that same conclusion, I'll move to grant the three waivers when the time is appropriate.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Jim. There's no landscaping or plantings being removed. These buildings are already in existence, so I don't think a survey is necessary, and the lighting is already in existence. No lighting is being added or subtracted. So I agree with Jim that the three waivers are appropriate.
Thank you, Joyce.
Well, Mr. Chair, then I'll move that we grant waivers to the requirement for a standard boundary survey, a landscape plan, and a lighting plan for the 88 Maple Street application.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on those waivers? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to grant the waivers as requested. So with that, board members, any additional questions on any of the revised application materials?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. So the proposed parking spaces are still parking in front of the garage doors?
So as Shannon said, the parking spaces in there It's still the existing.
Right, my question, and maybe it's in here and I'm not seeing it, the distance between the end of the parking spot and where they are parallel parked. If a car is in the parallel parking spot and a car needs to back out of the parking spot that is in front of the garage doors, is there adequate turnaround or backup space?
I'm trying to catch up, sorry. Are you looking on one of the,
Yeah, like you're talking about, Carrie Lynn, like you're talking about in the after-the-fact materials, if someone's parked in space that's
5,
labeled.
6, 7.
Right.
And then they can back up.
But would they
and
be backing up into whoever's parked
the
in space
parallel
number
parked
4?
cars, which is what I brought up at the last meeting when we had this item.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd kind of direct to our peer review from Diane Morbido from Sewell that was in our after-the-fact packet today. And she did note that on-site parking, the site sketch plan of the proposed parking spaces does not provide dimensions for the parking aisle. Based upon Google Earth and the sketch provided, the paved parking area is approximately 33 feet wide. The parking spaces are shown as angled, which will make it impossible for a vehicle to back out into the narrow aisle and then drive out in a forward position. The proposed layout will force drivers to back out into Maple Street or back into from Maple Street, which is not recommended. A revised parking layout that provides for an on-site turnaround is recommended so that vehicles are not required to back onto or off of Maple Street. I think that was some of the questions that we had in previous discussions, and obviously Diane is kind of supporting our questions.
Articulating what what we were trying to explain the last time, and I thought that's what I saw in what she was recommending, and I just thought maybe I was missing a resolution, but there's not, so.
And I think the key thing, and maybe Shannon can point out, is that we have to achieve more than they have. We have 9 parking spots that will be required for what they're asking for, and they're only showing 7, I believe, so.
Yes, can I just provide some input?
Sure, so, real quick, so this document here in the after the fact, this is from you, Shannon, is that?
Yes.
That's our understanding,
So-
okay.
On page 1, just, my click share is not loading quick enough for me to show it on the screen, so I apologize for everybody in the audience right now. But on page 1, this is an aerial photograph of 88 Maple Street. It's a little difficult to tell, but back in 2019, there were actually demarcated parking spots on the property. There were 3 at the very back, and they were all right next to each other. And then there was one where the white car is parked. So on the second page, I've used some orange lines to demarcate the 7 spots that currently exist there. The applicant would need to repaint them because the paint has worn off. But there is 1, 2, 3 at the very back of the parking lot, a 4th where the white car is parked, and then 3 more inside the existing garages. Is correct, that's not enough to support the additional unit that is being asked for. But while we were on the property, the applicant stated that the area next to the existing garage closest to Maple Street, where in the image there is a black car parked there, that area is wide enough to accommodate 2 more parking spots, and the applicant is open to paving that area if the planning board would like them to. The other thing to notice is while we were there, a property right next to this one has recently been surveyed for a completely different reason. But during that surveying process, they demarcated the end of the public right-of-way. And this area that the applicant is willing to pave is outside of the public right-of-way. So it would not affect or infringe upon the public right-of-way. I hope that answers the questions, and I hope the quick share allows me to share sometime soon.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. I think we understand the document better here. So that being said, I guess what I'm getting at is what's the applicant, what's the request in the application currently for parking? Is there an adjustment officially from the parallel or from the angled spots, or is that, so is this sort of, after discussion today, this is sort of the after the fact review with staff on site with the applicant, and this is sort of, we need 9 parking spaces, and this is sort of a request this evening that this is 9 parking spaces that satisfies a requirement as discussed with staff and the applicant on site for the board's deliberation this evening?
That's exactly why we met on site, to talk through the comments from Sewell. The angled parking spaces, as the peer reviewer stated, were not optimal, and so we went on site to see what other arrangements were possible. And this was a prior arrangement that had been functional on site in the past.
Okay, thank you. Did that make sense to board members? Carrie Lynn, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But if I may, I'm trying to converge. I think it's great that we have staff that's innovative and working with an applicant to try to come up with a creative solution, and I commend you to that. I'm trying to come up with the logical piece of our peer review now and that. And I think it's great if you were able to notice that you could fit 2 additional spaces below, on page 2, below 7, parking space 7, but that would have been where I would anticipate a restricted turnaround area to be, to meet Sewell's requirements, because even if there's no angled parking, if you're in parking space 1, 2, or 3, how are you going to maneuver your car around to drive out onto Maple Street in a 33-foot area? I guess that's, I don't understand the turning dynamics that would be required if you had anywhere near a moderately sized vehicle to be able to maneuver in that space that's kind of created across from 4 and 5 by the house. If somebody's parked in position number 4, there's no real way to turn your vehicle around to drive out, and that's going to bring us right back to the hazard that our peer review for traffic is telling us, and kind of my gut instinct, and I think what we were touching on at the first review of this. Do you have any suggestions? Is there a turning overlay that we know will fit in that space so that they can maneuver from the tail end of parking space 3 to number 4, that they can actually maneuver a vehicle? If all other spots were filled and you needed to get out of space 2, can you turn your vehicle around and drive out onto Maple Street?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could interject.
Yes, please.
What we'll do is we're going to take this back, look at it again, and ask the applicant to determine if it's going to be part of their application officially, because they really should be signing on to it, noting that they've submitted this for the record. This was a documentation of the staff going out there today and looking and giving you like helping with existing conditions. Certainly, I'm sure there was conversation about what they want to do, but we'll document this correctly with staff. We'll get it back to the peer reviewer, and we'll also have the city engineer look at it as well. Make sure that there's proper turning movements. If we have to go back out there and talk with the applicant with a tape measure or something, we will. But tonight we do have the public hearing, as well as we would like to have any other questions that the board has so that we can get all the questions together like the last time. So this was one step toward answering the question.
Sure, that's where, I think we're getting it. Jeff was on to the question that I had as well, and it seems to have answered some of Carrie Lynn's question as far as the angled parking. So I think we're getting there, just trying to understand the circular dynamic a little bit here. So that's good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim.
so it would seem like the first thing we need to do is to find the application complete. I think we can do that, even though this parking issue remains outstanding. And when I was going through the materials over the weekend, that seemed like the one issue that I couldn't quite get my head around exactly how that would be done. The ideas presented tonight are good ones, but I think the applicant, as Emily noted, has to sign on to an idea for parking, and I think Jeff's points are well taken. I think maybe if we're looking at that parking map, that you know, the visual of the site, if that black car wasn't there right next to the building, I think the people in spots 1 and 3 could find a way to turn around. It might not be a 3-point turn, but you know, might be a 4 or 5, but you could certainly do it. I'm not sure about parking spot number 2, but I think we can leave that for another day. So if it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, I'll move to find the application complete for both site plan and conditional use.
I'll second, then we'll have discussion, I guess.
Thank you for the motion, Jim. And the second, Joyce. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I agree, Jim, Joyce, that we could find it complete with what we have. Do we want to touch on some of the other points? Either way, we can do it in either order. I still would like to kind of clarify some of the code enforcement's correspondence, and maybe Shannon can touch on that, because we were very unclear about the number of units that was actually being created and how this accessory building in the back is partially finished for an apartment, and 4 or 5 in the main house. So just trying to figure out what those are. And I guess I'm open either way. If we want to find it complete, I'm fine, but I think it's very important that we give the applicant and staff very clear direction of where our concerns are. We've done that now with parking, and the other 2 issues I think would be well heeded. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members?
I mean, Mr. Chair, I think, Jeff raises another good point about the number of units in the building, and it looks like historically, the owner prior to the current owner tried to throw a few more units on that property without getting permits. And at least this owner is trying to do things the right way. But I agree, that's an issue that I think we need to air out. But I don't think we need to do that in the context of the application completeness vote. But I agree with you that I think as we're making a list of things for the staff for our next meeting on this, that would make perfect sense.
Thank you, Jim. I agree. I think there's a few questions as well, but I think finding the application complete, I can support as well, and then we can move into being specific about our questions and direction. Additional thoughts? Shannon?
I can definitely answer those questions now if you feel like that is what you'd like me to do, or I could hold off until you do your vote.
Yeah, let's continue with the motion, and we'll have additional discussion after that, or deliberation. All right. Any other thoughts? All right, so with that, motion by Jim, second by Joyce to find the application complete. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes?
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So with that, continuing, we've had the discussion regarding parking. I think I agree with some of our board members here, staff, location 8 and 9. seems to make sense. I did share the thought that Jim had with in this image here, there's a dark colored vehicle, and how that particular area comes into play. It seems like there is some area for additional movements, but if we could kind of get some of that tidied up and some of those questions answered, I think that would go a long way here. Any other thoughts there, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're on that topic of charming movement parking, where's the snow storage? So if that could be noted when we're going to try to plow this area, it looks like there's very limited real estate in that area of the 1, 2, and 3 space. And if we're using the turnaround, I don't know where they put any snow removal. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So additionally, we had some information regarding some of the light fixture locations. Are there any additional thoughts, questions, or concerns with that information there? And these are existing light fixture locations, correct, Shannon?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, I thought I had seen it. I wrote it down. On our packet, it looks like page 26 of 524. I have a note. We do show some snow storage at the end of spaces 1, 2, and 3. I thought I had seen that. So there's some indication there. There's trash receptacle locations. I don't see a note, and so I can only speculate, but it looks like there might be an indication of some snow storage sort of at the end of spaces 8 and 9 as well. If it looks like there's an intent to show that there as well. So any additional thoughts, questions, or concerns on lighting and those notes for snow storage area? So continuing on, additionally with as far as the number of units, Shannon, can you maybe add some clarity there on that one?
Yes. So I have spoken directly with the applicant as well as the code enforcement office to determine how many units are currently on site. So in the main structure, there are 3 units. 1 is a 2-bedroom, 2 are a 3-bedroom. And then the detached space that has started to be converted by the previous owner, not the applicant, into a 4th apartment is going to be a 2-bedroom. So that's how we came up with the requirement that the applicant needed to have 9 parking spots on site, because it's based on the multifamily parking, off-street parking use, and that is based on the number of bedrooms in each unit. So if this application were to be approved, there would be 4 dwelling units on 8 Maple Street's lot, 2 of which are 2-bedroom and 2 of which are 3-bedroom. There were some things that were happening without permits under the previous owner. The current owners have addressed and started to fix them, basically. So there was an attempt to add an additional unit to the larger structure that has since been absolved into one of the other units. So it's not a 4th unit within the main structure on the property.
So 4 total units on the property.
if you were to approve the one they're requesting in the existing outbuilding.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Does that answer some of the questions? Great.
I would also be remiss if I didn't mention one of the additional information or items in your after-the-fact packet is actually an email from Don Fisk, who's in the Code Enforcement Department. I forgot to mention it when I did the overview, but he addressed some of the questions that I picked up from rewatching the meeting that I was not present for.
Great, thank you. And that's where a little bit of the confusion came from me, because it talks about adding a fourth and then a fifth unit detached, and then it talks about the 3-unit not allowed to expand. So that's where I thought I was clear, and then unfortunately this added confusion for me. But I'm clear now. Thank you. I hope board members are as well. Great. Jim?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question for the staff. So assuming that there will be 4 units on this property, I'm just curious as to why we need 9 parking spaces instead of 8.
That is a great question. So that is specifically based on what is written in the ordinance for multifamily housing. A 2-bedroom dwelling unit in a multifamily housing situation development requires 2 parking spaces, but a 3-bedroom requires 2.5, and that's how we end up with the 9.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've seen cars that small, but I didn't know we were planning for them in the code. That's great.
Great. Any additional thoughts, questions, or concerns from board members? So I think I have my questions have been answered. Any other thoughts from board members? So with that, perhaps it's appropriate to move into our public hearing for this item.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we open public hearing on the 88 Maple Street application.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you for the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on opening public hearing for 88 Maple Street? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect all questions and address them at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one from the public who wishes to speak, I'm not sure we should close the public hearing, because I think we need to have particularly the parking issue resolved, and it's possible neighbors or someone might want to say something at a public hearing about that. So, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue the public hearing to our next scheduled meeting, or whenever the staff can schedule this.
January 21st, please.
January 21st.
I will second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So with that, I think we're in good shape. I think it looks like we have just confirmation on the parking here, Shannon. I think, board members, is there anything I missed? I think we're looking at parking, Joyce.
No, I just comment, I think part of the confusion with the angled parking spaces was, as I recall, the initial proposal had people parking in front of the garages instead of in the garages. So it certainly helps as far as traffic movement on the property if cars are out of that travel lane and in the garage.
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's good progress. I think there's potential here, so if we can work with the applicant and staff and our third-party reviewer to iron that out, I think there's potential there. And with that, if board agrees, we could request staff to put together draft findings of fact and conditions of approval as well for this, so we can review that for our meeting on the 21st. Yes, if board members don't have anything else to add, then, yeah, I think a motion to continue to the 21st with resolution on parking and draft findings of fact and conditions of approval.
You took the motion right out of my mouth, Mr. Chair, so I will so move.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim. And the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor to continue application review and public hearing to January 21st? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great, thank you. All right, continuing along here, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 8B. This is 18 Lund Road, and this is a continued application review and public hearing for site plan review for the proposed redevelopment of an existing site into enterprise car storage lot. This is at 18 Lund Road, map 69, lot 16, and this is within the business industrial zoning district. Anything to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks like we have a lot of items in the after-the-fact packet tonight, and two of those items are regarding 18 Lund Road. Just want to put your attention to those, which they are email update from Kendra about photometric docs and updates to the lighting plan, as well as an email from our city engineer, Adam Bliss, a memo rather. So I wanted to just point out a couple of things that the last meeting the board had requested conditions of approval and draft findings of fact. Staff is fine. There's a few conditions that we just would want to make sure that we would work with the applicant on going forward. If there's obviously the Adam Bliss's comments would be included in that, as well as some landscaping review items that we're just waiting to hear back from our landscape architect on, and the lighting review. The lighting review, the adjustments that were made, there's just very minor things that need to be updated and things that we can definitely handle as staff. So I just wanted to make that clear. I wasn't sure if that was quite clear, and it looks a little confusing based on the packet, but the applicant did fulfill the new timeline submission and everything.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Emily on that? and we have the applicant with us. Anything to add to that or update on?
No, I do have one question about one of the draft findings of fact, maybe for Emily, but I can wait, or we can discuss it now. It's item 21, Emily,
Yeah.
regarding fuel storage.
Yeah, please ask it now and we'll.
Okay, so it just says that fuel storage will be prohibited on site, and we're proposing a fuel storage tank on our plans. And so I think there was some discussion, it might have come in as a late comment from Adam, from the city engineer, but we are proposing fuel storage to be added in the future. It's not an immediate thing, but we wanted to cover it in the permit now. And I think the issue with the city engineer, again, I haven't seen the last comment, but he originally took issue with it because we hadn't provided a spill prevention plan, and the client not being prepared to add fuel storage now was also not prepared to spend the money to come up with a full spill prevention plan if, in fact, in the future, it never came to fruition. So I think we had offered at one point in our response to provide a spill prevention plan to the code enforcement office if and when they were going to install a fuel tank.
So, Mr. Chair, did you want me to?
Yeah, so there is not fuel storage proposed at this time, but there's a pad for it, there's a location for it, and there isn't a spill prevention design put together.
That is correct.
Okay.
However, so on the site plan, there's a fuel storage pad with the intention of potentially adding an above-ground fuel storage tank, but there is no spill prevention plan at this time.
Okay.
They're happy to provide one if they're going to install the tank, but it just seems, number one, it's on the plan that's in front of you now, and it seems a little arduous to have to do a full site plan amendment to then add the tank to the pad at a future date.
Okay, I understand the request. Emily?
So a site plan amendment could be like a staff amendment also. I just want to point that out. So it doesn't necessarily mean unless the board specifies that you want it to come back to the full board, doesn't necessarily mean it needs to come back to the full board. So there's different levels of site plan amendments. This actually came from Joe Leverrier, so I had asked him to weigh in on his conditions that he wanted me to put into the draft for you all. So that's where that came from.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I seem to recall some of the responses from the city engineer, and the reply was, there's no fuel dispensing planning on being installed, and I respect that it's marked on the plan, but I agree with our planner. There's no reason we can't leave that condition of approval in there, and it should fall under a minor site plan. It's commercial space, it's under 5,000 square feet. That would be something in the city planner's purview to review as a minor site plan. We can leave that noted. It should be corrected to future fuel storage pad. But, I mean, obviously there's a cost factor for the applicant, but we shouldn't just blanket it and leave it open at this point. There's a lot of concerns in this area with their runoff, with some existing contamination. If you remember the packet we had for the last review of 1,500 pages with DEP reported spills in this area and the recycling facility, the old Saco steel facility. I think if we're going to introduce more, potential for spills with another fuel dispensing station, we ought to have staff really review it. So I have no qualms about leaving that condition of approval in there and let them come back. I think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And when you say come back at a staff level review, or do you want to see it before the board as well?
No, I think completely at the staff level review, but I would much rather have it come through the planning department as a site plan amendment than having a note saying, go to the codes office. And, I just think it's more appropriate with what the review that comes from the planning department, going to the city engineer, going to the water resource, I think there's a lot more networking between departments coming out of the planning office than might happen if it just goes through codes.
Understood, thank you. So we could, once we get to conditions, I have a thought, maybe, but understand where everyone's coming from now, so.
I think the applicant
Right.
would be perfectly fine with a staff level amendment. I was just,
Yep.
yeah, I didn't understand that it would be, just be staff level, so.
Sure.
I think that's fine. We're happy with that.
Great, so board members, any additional, kind of get into deliberation here, or discussion, but any additional questions, thoughts, or concerns? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to pick up on the lighting review. I know we had talked about it briefly about possibly some light trespass. And apparently our peer review did finally come back. There are some issues. I think it's definitely something that we will be able to address. I was a little disappointed in our peer review's detail. Hopefully, you know, it's not consistent with what we've seen with like a nice summary and conclusion. They did kind of a line by line, but it was pretty basic, but it did hit on some very important facts.
Mr. Chair, our peer reviewer is this person right here. So we'll note it for the future.
Well, I thought, I want to say, I want to then, how come it looks like on our after-the-fact packet that it came from an engineering firm? Who was Joe Hawkins? How did he play into the equation? Is he a lighting engineer?
He was the lighting designer employed by our,
By the applicant, so it wasn't a peer review.
no,
So that's the applicant's response.
Right.
And then Shannon's review was in the meeting packet.
So that would explain why they skipped over the lighting uniformity ratio. A little too involved.
Oh, for me?
Mm.
Oh, so yes, I don't know how to calculate that on my own.
Okay.
But I will say that knowing the max foot candles that were on the property and the minimum foot candles on the overall property, the ratio was not in alignment with the ordinance as it was written. So I didn't dig too deep on how out of alignment it was, but I did note that, and then the lighting engineer for the applicant updated it so that the areas within the parking area and outside of the parking area came further into alignment. There are some remaining tweaks that need to happen underneath the carport in order to kind of bring it further into alignment with the standards, which can occur at the staff level. But my reviews of lighting are often high level, and then if anything is very glaringly not addressing the standards as set, like I notate them. But I don't. You're right. I don't get into the nitty gritty of the entire ratio.
Yeah, I just want to be very careful then when we're having that peer review and they have a lighting engineer that's done it. My understanding of that ratio is going to be a certain percentage of the overall area that's at a target point, not just a min and a max for the whole site. So there's a lot of calculation that would go into that. And I wouldn't want to unfairly penalize them and have them, you know, negate some lighting that might create a safety concern later on. Or the inverse, because we tie their hands with the interior islands and the landscaping for the parking that they're trying to do. And then they have a unique situation with their transmission corridor where they have a no-build zone underneath there. So there's a lot of things that they're trying to work with. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't unfairly binding their hands. But if they're going to bring the light trespass and particularly under the canopy levels down to alignment, that's kind of the key things that I would have picked up on from a high level. Thank you.
I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but the first sheet of the photometrics plan, the revised plan that I submitted, I believe it reports the average lumens across the site in table format, and I'm not sure if the uniformity ratio was provided, but if it were provided, it would be there.
Kendall, I will say that the excuse me, the updated one provided a little bit more information about the lighting min, max, and average along the site, which was helpful and was not a part of the first one. So there was a little bit more information that was provided.
And can I just ask, what was the issue with the carports?
The carports, we have a standard that even underneath canopies, the foot candle at ground level is supposed to be a maximum of 20-foot candles. And right now, the carport is just, it's too bright.
So we took out the ceiling-mounted lighting from the carport structures altogether. So we should have removed any interior lighting from the carport. So it should be excluded from the actual site photometrics plan altogether.
Yeah, that was what was kind of a confusing in my review of that, is somehow, and maybe it's something with the calculations of how it was reformatted, but somehow the carports got brighter, which I couldn't fully understand how that happened.
Additional wall packs were added to the outside of the carports because when we brought the wattage down on the other site lighting in order to be under the maximum of 8-foot candles, we had to then, there were dark spots around the site, particularly on the, I think it was the eastern and western sides of the carport. So we had to add some additional wall packs. So I don't know if that might have brought levels up surrounding the carports, but I'm not sure about underneath.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't want to have a back and forth, but what we'll do is we can, if the board is comfortable with condition of approval, we'll make sure we get all the proper lighting reviews done and make sure that it meets the ordinance standards, and that, you know, obviously there's been edits made and everyone's working in good faith to make sure the standards are met.
Sure. And thank you, Emily. I was just getting there because I see a table on the back. It's not 100%. I can't read the table and the small text all at the same time. But we have responses from the applicant on the questions and the notes here from staff. So we're working towards it. I think that's the right direction. It's not perfect yet. We'll get there. So I think this is steps in the right direction here. So I'm not looking this evening to a couple foot candles here, a couple foot candles there. We'll resolve it. But thank you. I think we've answered the immediate questions here. But this is a good start. Thank you. Any additional thoughts or concerns? I guess there's a few here, I think, from engineer. Is that correct, Emily?
So Adam Bliss had submitted a memo. He's working with Joe. He's one of our city engineers. And
that's the list here. There's
he had
5 or
a
so
list.
items.
Yeah, so he had some time off during the holidays. So he was able to get this to me today at 3. So Kendra, I know I emailed this to you about a couple hours ago or an hour ago, so.
So there's a few items here that needs to be addressed, of course. I'm just jumping around. A couple of my notes had to do with lighting. We've talked about that. We talked about the potential fuel station. Any other thoughts from board members? I think we've captured some of my notes here. Jeff?
I just had a question for Kendra with regards to, you provided the informational packet for the non-conductive fencing that would be required under the CMP right-of-way for their transmission line. I just feel like some of the site plan maps it didn't all have the same kind of landscape buffering. Am I correct to assume that the sections of non-conductive fence will be, you know, on either side of their 15-foot clearance of their transmission line right-of-way? It'll be directly under or in the footprint of the right-of-way. So particularly on the Lund Street side, is that going to affect the landscaping plan? Because a couple of them looks like there are some shrubs that are intended to be planted. I'm on page 7 of 19 for your revised site plan that's in our packet. I don't know if staff could pull that up. It's labeled sheet 7 of 12 for the landscaping plan.
Yes, it would appear that they are slightly in conflict. We were trying to, so we were asked by the landscape reviewer to fill in the buffer there, so we put in some low shrubbery in order to do that, as we can't have trees that are, you know, going to grow up tall enough to impact the power lines there. But with the addition of that gate for CMP, we may have to remove 2 or 3 of those plantings.
So I just wanted to be very clear that that gate, there's a non-conductive fence, but it's also a gate section that CMP has access to maintain that corridor. So there's basically an existing, or there'll be a driveway of some sort, or pathway in from Lund Road to access your lot through a non-conductive gate directly under that transmission line. So there would be no plantings or shrubs in that way, correct?
That's right, but the gate is only about 18 feet wide, which is what they need for access. So we'd only have to remove the shrubs that would affect that 18-foot wide path. We can leave some of the proposed plantings in that area because it's probably about, the proposed plantings probably are 60 feet wide if the corridor is 100 feet wide, maybe 70 feet of plantings. So we'd only be removing about 20 feet of those. And we could make that change with the revised site plans or landscape plan that's submitted. We are waiting on the landscaping review still, I believe.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that I heard all 3 pieces, that it all fit together, and I kept seeing that landscaping plan. I'm like, how are they putting the gate in if there are bushes in the way? So, okay, thank you.
Fair comment.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional board member thoughts, questions, or concerns?
Mr. Chair,
Jim.
one of my questions is, it wasn't clear to me when I was reading all the materials, and still isn't clear. Are we still waiting, or is the applicant still waiting for reviews to be done by city staff or peer reviewers, or is that all done now? Have we received all the responses and the applicant has responded to those?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to address that?
Yes, please, yeah.
So we have received rounds of reviews for every peer reviewer. We had some comments from our landscape architect peer reviewer that weren't fully addressed. At the last meeting, Kendra had mentioned that she thought an outdated plan had gotten to the landscape peer reviewer, so I did correct that, make sure she had the right plan. We just don't have our final review comments on that last plan. I think, again, just the holiday schedules everyone was on, so I just don't have a final word from her.
But the city engineer and Public Works, and they've all submitted all their comments, and the applicant has had an opportunity to respond to those, and
Yep, the only remaining comments from the city engineering folks are the memo that's in the after the fact packet. And Joe Leverrier has had an opportunity to give me draft conditions that you've seen, so he's seen those draft conditions. I'd recommend that you include Adam's memo that the applicant must respond to, which is pretty much covered under 6A. But both the landscape architect review comments and the Adam's comments are covered under 6A to respond to fully.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Any additional thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, I guess just a follow-up question to Emily's, the comment that you just made about 6A. Are you saying that the proposed findings of fact, specifically 6A, are fine as is, or that we should add a provision that the applicant should also respond to the city engineer's January 7th comments?
So I was just, Mr. Chair, if you.
Yes.
Item 6A does cover responding to everything that remains outstanding, which would include
Okay.
the memo that was in tonight's packet.
Wondered if we needed to do some redrafting.
I don't think you need to do redrafting unless you like to redraft, which you're welcome to do that if you really would like. But I think you're covered with what you have here.
Thank you for the clarity. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I would move to reopen the public hearing for 18 Lund Road.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on reopening the public hearing? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to reopen the public hearing. Anyone with us this evening, please, if you would like to speak on this item, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will collect all questions and respond at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one wishing to speak, I move to close the public hearing for 18 Lund Road.
I second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, so I think we've covered all of the outstanding items. We've had discussion. So with that, we have review of our findings of fact. And I know how diligent Jim and Joyce are with this, so I think we have a few here to confirm or amend. We have, I guess, my notes, F, I guess this is item 6F, lighting, H, off-site impacts, M, stormwater, O, hazardous materials. And I think that's, in addition to item 2, Emily, perhaps we could update the agent's name. I think that might be an old name. Board members, do you have any additional items there? Did I miss anything on those findings to confirm?
So, Mr. Chair, which, I was writing them down as you were speaking, but I didn't catch them all, but I think you said 6F, H, M, and O?
I believe, yes, those are the items that I have to confirm.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move to amend the finding of fact 6F for lighting to read that the applicant will work with city staff and a peer review to meet all the requirements of zoning Article 230-604 as applicable to this site after approval.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on that motion? So Emily's been gracious enough to throw it up on the screen here. Does that capture your motion appropriately, Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the amendment to finding of fact 6F? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to amend item 6F of the findings of fact as drafted.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to amend proposed finding of fact 6H, off-site impacts, by deleting the last sentence that reads, "The board should make a finding on this standard," and in its place, insert based on application materials, peer review, comment responses, and materials provided, the standard is met.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on that motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to amend finding of fact item 6H as drafted. So item 6F regarding stormwater and erosion controls, as Emily's confirmed, we have a condition of approval that addresses satisfying any remaining comments, a few of which I think are applicable to this section as well here. So perhaps, if the board finds appropriate, an amendment similar to 6F might be
Yeah.
satisfactory.
Mr. Chair, I move to amend proposed findings of fact 6M to provide that the applicant will work with city staff and peer review to meet the requirements, specifically to satisfy the city engineer's comments of January 7th.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jim. So motion to amend finding of fact 6M to state that the applicant will work with city staff and peer review to meet the requirements, specifically satisfying engineers' review comments of January 7th, 2025. Additional discussion. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Chair, I'll move to amend proposed finding of fact 6O, eliminating the second sentence, which reads, "The board should make a finding on this standard," and replacing it with, based on the application materials, comment responses, and materials provided, the standard is met.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
Second.
Second by Jim, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to amend item 6O, or the findings of fact as drafted. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft findings of fact as amended.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft conditions of approval as presented.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? So I'm going to bring up item 21. That's regarding that on-site fuel storage. And I guess ask Emily's opinion, does it, and the board's opinion as well, of course, as far as, is it necessary to, or can the board be specific about a staff level site plan amendment for this particular item, or is an amendment as written satisfactory?
You know, Mr. Chair, I would think I'll retract my second, because I think we should amend it and be very clear. I would be in favor of us amending this to be clear that we expect there to be a minor site plan review by the city planner and staff in the future. That way we're being very clear, the applicant knows what our intentions are, and if for some reason we were to change city staff in 5 years, it's clear what our intention was. They can have the documentation. Planning board said they wanted a minor review by the city planner. I think that would be very appropriate to amend before we approve this.
Sure, I'll retract my motion and move to amend 21 to provide in the second sentence that a minor site plan amendment by the city planner will be required in the future if the applicant intends to install on-site fuel storage.
And I will second that motion.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on that motion? All right, those in favor of amending item 21 as drafted. Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt, I'm going to wait and ask if the applicant might want to speak first.
I'm sorry. I just noticed item 6G, no snow storage signs shall be installed along the northerly edge of pavement to prohibit snow storage within the 75-foot buffer to Goose Fair Brook. But the city engineer has requested that we move the fence to the edge of pavement. So are we able to remove that condition, considering we won't be able to store snow in that area if it's fenced off?
Mr. Chair, I can provide some light.
Sure.
So there was some question about moving the fence or putting in signage. Preference would be to move the fence, so I think that's fair. We don't need signs and fencing. So the fence was farther back, closer to the resource. The city engineer's review memo from Adam says he wants the fence pulled back so that it's farther away from the resource. So it'll be like a physical barrier for where snow can go up to. Before, the fence was farther back, and we wanted snow storage signage saying where snow could go. So it's better to have the fence pulled back.
Sure. That's a fair question. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, if I may ask the city planner, is there like a paved area right up to this fence? Is the ability for them to take a loader and dump snow over the fence? Does it make sense to have a sign on the fence that says no storage? Or is this fence in a gravelly area or a grass area where they wouldn't typically plow up to and then dump snow over, negating what the engineer is trying to do with keeping the snow storage from running into the Goosefair Brook?
I think that's a question best addressed to the applicant, because they might know the operations best, but I can't imagine someone would be doing that, but.
We provided a snow storage plan, and we'll have areas roped off for snow storage that are within the paved, developed area. And there's plenty of space for it in the wintertime. They're huge snow storage areas. It's also a 6-foot fence, so a plow truck, a typical plow truck, I don't know if they'll have a loader out there plowing, but a typical plow truck would not be able to lift snow and move it over the fence. If the signs are required, the applicant will put them up.
I guess I don't see any harm in having signs on the fence if the fence is in the appropriate location, because you're trying to make it very clear, you know, they won't be under engineering review 5 years down the road when they're doing snow removal, but I could go either way. I don't see any harm in, you know, $300 worth of signs on the fence, but the goal is really for us to protect that resource, and it's an impaired stream now. I don't see any harm. Less likely the signs will get knocked over if they're on the fence, but I would leave it in. Thank you.
I guess I'm wondering, I mean, yeah, where the fence is going to be in relation to the stream, maybe no snow storage beyond this fence, something like that, because I think that starts making things confusing. Are you not supposed to store snow near the fence if there's a sign on it?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Is the snow storage that which I don't have the plan up in front of me, the snow storage that you say is delineated on the map, is it near that fence?
No.
Okay, so if there's no snow storage near that fence, do we still need a sign saying no snow storage near the fence? If they have snow storage areas already, that's why I'm asking. Just a thought.
Well, I mean, respectfully, I guess my question would be, most commercial parking lots, you don't see a sign that says snow storage here. You know, it's the innovative, you know, snow removal crews that year by year, depending where they're parking their cars, are going to try to put snow in the most strategic spot. I don't know if it's worth a huge discussion on, but our goal is supposed to be protecting those resources, and we know that Goosefair Brook is impaired. If the city engineer called it out, and they're obviously willing to work with us, they're moving the fence, that's better. I just didn't see the harm in not incorporating signs as well, but I can understand Joyce's point that might be a little confusing. How far in front of the fence do you not put snow? So
Yeah, I mean, maybe the proposed language that says no snow storage signs are installed along the northerly edge of the pavement is really the best solution.
Yeah, I did like your earlier idea of no snow storage beyond this point. If they're going to be on the fence, I think that makes sense to, you know, prevent them from dumping over the fence.
So I'll move to amend 6G to provide that no snow storage beyond this fence signs shall be installed along the fence closest to Goosefair Brook.
I will second that.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. And if I could ask when Emily's ready to throw that up on the screen to review.
It's easier to spell than it is to say.
Sure. So, motion made by Joyce and seconded by Jeff to amend condition of approval item 6G to indicate no storage of snow beyond this fence. And this would be installed along the fence closest to Goosefair Brook. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to amend 6G as drafted.
So now, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the draft conditions of approval as amended.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the conditions of approval as amended? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to accept the applicant's application for site plan and site location of development delegated authority review for 18 Lund Road, map 69, lot 16.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to approve the site plan and site location development review for 18 Lund Road? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next item this evening is item 6C. This is a continued application review and public hearing for 12 School Street. This is map 31, lot 7, and this is a site plan review to rehabilitate the existing church structure into 7 workforce housing units and a community gathering space. This is within the downtown zoning district. Anything to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants provided responses. They went through each of the questions that the board members asked from the last meeting and provided information that was in the meeting packet. And we have also provided information regarding Maine Water's capacity to serve letter. So tonight we've scheduled the public hearing, and it's an opportunity to hear from the applicant as well, and then let us know if there's any other outstanding questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily.
Oh, and just wanted to mention that we do have 2 other staff members here, Economic Development Director Tracy Desjardins, who's working on this project from the city's perspective, as well as Chief Jack Clements, who is interested in workforce housing from the police department's perspective. So if you have any questions for them, they're here as well.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily at this time? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had a few questions, and I'm not sure if we so much for Emily or for our economic development. I want to thank the applicant. They did a great job kind of highlighting all the questions we had at our last meeting, and it was very concise. Wish everyone kind of did that. It kind of really helped move through the thoughts and questions that we had. I know Maine Water was able to come back, even though they don't have a full engineered design. They're feeling like they have capacity to serve for the sprinkler system and a separate water supply for the housing. I think the parking might be a question, but when I was trying to evaluate this, you know, it's been presented as workforce housing every time. And I know that we had, or I had questions about what happens if this venture fails. How does the city have any options to retain or purchase back the property? And what I was provided sounded like it was more the Maine Housing's contract that they would have, and this 40-year contract of needing to meet criteria of service and eligibility in this space. And that's where I started to get confused. And I guess I was under the impression this was workforce housing. That seems like everything on our application was saying workforce housing. And I know speaking with some departments, they've been saying that they have a hard time attracting qualified candidates to work in our community because of the cost of living. And I was thinking, wow, what a great opportunity. At least there's 2 units in this building that was going to meet that. But when I was reading the main housing kind of contract obligation for this 40-year window, it sounded like it was something different. We're kind of signing up for the other units in the building would be like subsidized housing, possibly like Section 8 subsidized housing. And it didn't seem like there was a differentiation there. And I don't know how those two work together and how they necessarily meet maybe some of the goals that I was very excited about in the comprehensive plan that were called out about low income affordable housing and workforce housing. So I was hoping, Mr. Chairman, if the other board members want, if maybe Mrs. Jardins could speak to that a little bit. Maybe she has a little bit more clarification. I want to make sure that it's going to be a space that is conducive to attracting city employees that want to live there versus there always seems to be a natural divide between, neighborhood or, I don't want this to come out wrong, but, I don't know if we necessarily have subsidized housing and workforce housing in the same building, if that is cohesive. And they're very small, efficient units, 1 bedroom, sometimes open concept. I was just trying to understand how that is going to work, and are we truly signing up for workforce housing for 6 units of workforce housing, or are we signing up for, city gets 2 units of workforce housing, so we're getting a deal on this, and we're going to have, subsidized housing for the remainder. And if you could offer some clarity, that would be helpful to me.
Mr. Chair, I'd also recommend hearing from the applicant, too. The applicant's well-versed in these programs, as well as Director Desjardins.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, could we hear from the applicant first to maybe help add some insight?
Okay. Yes, certainly, and I appreciate your concern. So this is we are applying for a specific main housing program called the Rural Affordable Rental Program, which was the documentation I sent to you. That stipulates that all the units in the development need to be, for 45 years, need to be affordable to people making 80% of the area median income or below. No, you can't discriminate against housing in terms of whether you accept vouchers or not. So we wouldn't do that by any means, but the level at which these rents are pegged in our pro forma are above the voucher standard. So that is a true workforce rent. And that's essentially meaning that 80% rents are in the city of Saco are above the voucher standard, which is often more around the 60% AMI benchmark. Does that answer your question to some extent? There will be no, so the units will be available to anyone 80% of the area median income or below, but they will have to be able to afford the rent that we have in our development performer, or else, the development, we won't be able to pay our operating expenses, and there'd be no point in renting to them. So that's I guess the only point I can make on that effect.
So, if I may, is there anything that binds you to setting that rental value, right? So if for some reason, the city doesn't have applicants that are interested in the 2 units and they're sitting vacant for 6 months or a year, and you guys, aren't able to get the income that you need, could that whole use change because you change your business model, or is there something that's contractually bound that you will always, for the 45 years, be having a rental rate that is a certain percentage of that term, the area mean income that you referenced? Is there something that's going to state that so that this won't be flipped in 4 years to a different type of housing?
There is nothing that, I guess to put it most straightforwardly, that Maine Housing is not going to over-subsidize this project. They're going to, so this is a program that's specifically targeting people at 80% or below. It is not, they have other programs that are for 30% AMI, and those actually put the vouchers in the units. So this is, so they're providing a certain amount of subsidy to these units to allow them to be built, but they're not providing anything more. So there isn't an adjustment we can make. We are signing covenants based on the amount of subsidy that we'll be getting at the time of development, not some future subsidy.
Okay. And then does that 45-year contract, if your entity defuncts at some point?
No.
Right? Hopefully not,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
is that like, deed restricted for the entire parcel, so whoever picks it up? And
It is, I mean, Maine Housing essentially functions as a bank, right? So they would have debt on the project. They have, their subsidy exists on the building as a 0% loan, so that they hold that debt for the full term of compliance. So yes, that would be up to Maine Housing. If Quality Housing Coalition were to no longer be the owner for some reason, the new owner would have to assume that those debts that and the covenants that come along with them, and yeah, would have to, if to the extent possible, talk to Maine Housing. But usually, if they have, the reason they put that debt on there is so they can control the situation for the full 45 years.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Chair, if I can.
Yes.
As well. I know this is a newer thing for us to look at. We haven't really looked at a lot of affordable housing developments in the past, recent past, especially under our new 230-703 section in our ordinance. But if the board makes a decision on this, you'll also have requirements for 30 years that need to be monitored, which is something that we are familiar with. I'm familiar with how to do on a different program. And so we would be looking for like a compliance report on an annual basis to make sure that these requirements are still being met in order to qualify for this use long-term, as well as the density is reliant on that. So you are looking at this as an affordable housing development, meeting those section 230-703 standards, and the market that they are going to be looking to attract will be workforce housing with 2 units to the city. So there's going to be 2 layers of protection as far as the affordable housing provision goes, at least for 30 years on our end and 45 years on Maine Housing's end.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Any additional questions at this time for board members? Jim?
I just have one for the applicant. I was driving past the old church earlier this week, and one question I had is, are you making any exterior changes like to the steeple?
Yes, we will be restoring both of the steeples. As you can see in the photos, there is one at the front and one at the back of the building.
So you're going to restore
Yeah,
those?
that'll be, we're restoring the entire exterior of the building.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
it will be done we're getting, not to send it back to Dan, but we're getting federal tax credits for it. So it's actually not, we're going before historic preservation next week, but it'll be, one could say, a higher standard than the city's ordinance.
Well, it's just that the asphalt shingles on that larger steeple look pretty rough, and so someone's got a lot of work
It
ahead
is
of them.
a big project, but we are trying to take it on.
Well, that's, I have no interest in going up there.
And actually, Dan has also noted in our neighborhood meeting that there is actually a special fund in the state of Maine that is designated to restoring steeples.
Wow, well, that's wonderful. That was the only question I had. I think it's a wonderful project, and wish you the best of luck, so.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any additional thoughts at this time?
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
we may, could we hear from Mr. Jardins and just make sure that the views for the city and the city departments are going to be realized? I guess I kind of want this as our peer review. No offense to the applicant, but I kind of want it as a peer review for some of the data that's been presented for this, median rental income and how it's going to classify as workforce housing and such.
Sure, Tracy, could you maybe add a little bit of thought from your side?
Yes. This is definitely a great project. As you know, the church has been sitting there. The city purchased this property for a youth teen center. COVID hit, cost escalated, and then council had made the decision that we just can't put the funding into this. So what are our options? So Dan had looked at this building and thought it would be a great looking in the neighborhood. One of the things that I've been working on is how can we get more of that housing in the downtown area? Looking at our buildings, especially the upper levels, we want that good mix. We want that viable downtown. We want more commercial to open up. Well, we need people in order for that to happen. So this, again, is hitting a target. We look at our workforce, and people can't afford down here. Most of the projects that are coming before you are all market rate housing. This is an opportunity and a partnership, and as Emily can attest to this, her and I have been to national conferences regarding housing, and everybody's doing this public-private partnership, and that is what we need to do in this case. We have a building, we have a developer that's willing to come and make an investment and really make good use of it. The upstairs is going to stay as open space. The stained glass, again, the building is going to be restored. You can't ask for anything better in your downtown than to have a historic building be restored instead of just sit and rot. Within the workforce housing, again, the units are going to be small, so that they are going to fit, that you're not going to get families that are going to be going into these places. You're going to get those young professionals. You're going to get those ones that are at the entry level. This is a big push, especially for, and Chief Clemens can certainly speak to what he has to go through as far as in our police force and not having the workforce that we need within this community. And the reason why is there's no housing. If you have somebody at a professional, you're looking at a teacher, they're coming in at an entry level, just starting out, again, where they're going to live. The medium income for Saco, I've been here for 2 years. When I first came, it was like $73,000. It's $80,000 now. That's high. And again, for somebody who's just coming into the workforce as a young professional, where they're going to live. We want a viable community, and again, we want to see more projects like this. This is definitely a true public-private partnership, and the council is well supported in this. We're selling this building for $1. And within that working, again, having that space above to be able to use, it's going to be open for the public to be able to use. Age-friendly will be able to use it. We'll be able to have meetings there, which we run out of space here for that as well. And again, having 2 units reserved for the city is another bonus, is because now our police chief or our fire chief, when they're out there recruiting, they're going to be able to say, hey, we have a place for you. And all of this will be, worked out. So yes, I foresee this being, when you get into the grant programs that they're going after, there are the stipulations. I have been involved with workforce housing before when I was in Gardner, and I had to report every year that it remained workforce housing. So that is something that you have to be in compliance with. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's really what I'm looking for. And because you're saying there are grants in addition to the main housing, so you'll be reporting to like
Well,
multiple
this,
entities?
yes, so when you look at, if they're going after grant programs, I'm thinking more in kind of like this, the state, those programs, there's a stipulations that you have to monitor it, because they're giving, they're giving funding, it's federal dollars, so you have to meet those guidelines. It's kind of like that with the CDBG, as I explained to you earlier. I have to meet those guidelines. So as, in working with them as this public-private partnership, again, we will be responsible for making sure that they are meeting those guidelines that's set before them.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Any additional thoughts? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, is it possible, could we possibly have Chief Clements come up and give us his thoughts on how it might benefit his staffing? And it's also kind of in his group of his, if there are any concerns with, parking waivers. And I think somebody brought up where they might park during a snow event, a snow ban. Might be some useful insight as we consider the waiver. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for having me come up. I think you will find that all along southern Maine, that communities are having a difficult time recruiting, whether it's public works, police department, fire department, teachers. They're having a hard time recruiting because there is a lack of affordable housing. I can tell you prior to our last contract negotiation, which the police department did boost up their pay quite a bit, which was outstanding. Prior to that, we would have, I think we had 5 or 6 people that had applied from out of state, and then they started looking at what the housing costs were, and they just told us, hey, we can't move there. And that's looking at a radius of 60 minutes from our police department. We give people a 60-minute radius to be able to come into work, and they were not able to find housing. So I do think that having something like this is important to communities, especially in southern Maine, where you're looking at, I believe, the median price of a home in York and Cumberland counties both has exceeded $500,000. So the housing is getting, it's getting difficult. And I think for, teachers, like I said, teachers, public works employees, firefighters, police, any of these government positions, there are folks that want to come work in these communities and they just can't afford it. So we're losing people to, frankly, out of state, or they're going further north or going way west. So I think this would be a very, very good program to have for the city. As far as parking, I think parking downtown is a little bit of a challenge, but with the opening of, or with the city purchasing the parking lot at, I think it's 142 Main Street, there is a location for snowband parking for people that were to live here. Any questions? Happy to answer any questions if I could.
This is great. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you.
Additional thoughts, questions?
Well, I think one of the positives is being single-bedroom units, and we kind of go through the parking standard. That's like one parking spot per unit. So we're, the biggest inconvenience for parking would probably be the gathering space. But it was a multifunction building previously. There's several churches in the area. There's a city hall. This kind of ebb and flow with all how parking and how the schedule goes. So I don't see it as a huge impact. I mean, sometimes I look at that big building and think, geez, we could do much more with workforce housing given the volume of that building. But then obviously there are challenges for your historic preservation needs and whatnot, and then we'd lose the additional possible gathering space. So I guess it's kind of an easy balance, and I wouldn't see any particular obstacles with a parking waiver if we're talking 6 units, 6 spots. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to grant a parking waiver to the 12 School Street project.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the parking waiver? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to grant the parking waiver as requested.
Mr. Chair, is this, I believe this evening we're supposed to be holding a public hearing as well.
Yes, sir.
Well, if it's appropriate, I'll move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on open the public hearing? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening and would like to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We will collect all comments and address them at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward for public hearing, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jim. Any discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Back to the board. Any additional thoughts, questions, or concerns?
Mr. Chair, I think the next meeting is January 21st, so I will move to continue this application to January 21st and request that the staff provide us with findings of fact and conditions of approval to review.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of continuing application review and requesting staff provide draft findings of fact and condition of approval for the January 21st meeting, was that correct? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great, thank you.
Did I do this wrong by unplugging first? Hopefully not.
Mr. Chair, can we take a short break, please?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute recess here to reset the room. We will continue this evening with our next item on the agenda, item 6D. This is a application of completeness review for a site plan review for a proposed private road in the West Residential Zoning District at 197 Jenkins Road. And this is presented this evening by Five Star Holdings, LLC, and Trillium Engineering Group. Anything to add, Emily? No, Shannon, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Shannon's reviewing this, so I'll let her go ahead and give you the overview.
Yes, thank you. So this private road application was previously submitted last year and then withdrawn at one point in time. So it may be a little bit confusing what I've added to the application package, but there are public comments from the initial submission and also the secondary submission. So what has been submitted this time around is the applicant is looking to improve an existing driveway and also extend that driveway. So they're improving it to be up to private road standards and then extending it to allow for frontage for another lot. That lot is proposed to have a duplex on it. We have included in the packet today a checklist for the site plan and some different communications between planning staff and the applicant and their engineer team. There are some things we have still requested. I believe the applicant is getting those additional items together. And if you have any questions, obviously I am here and the applicant is also standing at the podium. So please let me know if you have anything that you'd like me to answer.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at this time? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I was a little bit confused going through this packet, trying to come through as a site plan review for the private road frontage, and I get the concept of that, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on with the condominium association, because why would we be creating these additional lots that need frontage if it's a condominium association? But then there are two separate condominium associations, and it looks like, I was trying to map this together, that sometime in like June of 2022, one of the lots was either the original lot was purchased or was broken off, and there were easements for CMP in 2022, and then the Registry of Deeds has this filing on June 20th of 2023 for, I think, another lot. How does this not come before us as a subdivision if we're making these multiple lots within a 5-year window? And do they even need to go that road if it's all going to be a condominium association? I'm just a little bit perplexed about, and then there's all this additional land that the Holdings has at the end of their turnaround. So is this just a way of slowly stepping in and creating lots without going through subdivision? I'm a little confused as to how this all transpired. Can you kind of bring me up to speed?
Before you do that, Shannon, Jim, do you have?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I wanted to report to the board, as you all know or may know, I retired from the practice of law about 3 years ago. But about 10 years ago, I had an office on Alfred Street in Biddeford, and there was a property dispute between my office and Five Star Holdings. That dispute was resolved amicably and I think to everyone's satisfaction. And so I don't think there's any conflict of interest for me sitting on the board here for this application, but I wanted to present that to the board for your determination and if the applicant has any objections to me participating on this matter.
Great, thank you, Jim.
No objections.
Great, thank you. Board members, any concerns?
I don't have any concerns about, I mean, given the fact that it's been quite a time and it was resolved amicably, it sounds like there's no conflict now.
No. All right, great. I agree as well. Thank you, Jim. So Shannon, back to Jeff's question. Do you have any insight from staff level that you could provide for us?
Yes. So that has been a question that has been asked at the staff level. We did confer with the code enforcement department about this. They are under the belief that this would not require subdivision due to the existing of a lot of record, but I am happy to get that in writing with a further description of why the code enforcement does not believe subdivision would be required in this instance for review at a later time, if that is what you would like me to provide. I'm more than happy to get it.
I don't know how the rest of the board feel. I feel like that is kind of very pertinent that, you know, we hold other applicants to this very high standard, and it seems like there's something else transpiring here. I mean, how, you know, I saw that there was an easement for CMP across an existing right-of-way that had been there since like the 50s, I guess, like a paper right-of-way. But if this is a subdivision, we should have had purview to review that and see if that was going to be an underground distribution system. You know, yeah, and it's just this, we've seen several of these with these private street extensions to gain frontage, and that's not necessarily in our best interest of what our task is to try to promote connectivity and flow and neighborhood designs. It's kind of a piecemeal approach. So I would definitely like to have a report from codes, if they're the governing body, as to how this does not apply as a subdivision, especially when it looks like the Registry of Deeds, Lot 1, 2, and 3 were created in June of 2023. I would like some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions from board members at this time for staff? All right, great. And applicants with us this evening, if we'll turn it over to you and give us an update, or I guess presentation, no real update, because this is the first time we see you, but.
Sure, I can give a quick presentation. So Eric Doobie, Trillium Engineering. With me tonight is Patrick Donahue from Five Star Holdings. And I'll let Patrick address the specific kind of history to go over that a little bit, give a little more explanation on that. Basically, there was 2 duplexes on this existing roadway. We're trying to extend it to get a 3rd duplex with a proper turnaround. We've got basically some environmental situations on the property that we're really trying to stay away from and stay out of. So we're working hard to do that, working with DEP, Army Corps on like wetland impacts. We've had Brady Frick out there taking a look at specifically wetlands in general, stream locations with GPS location, things like that, to make sure we've got the existing conditions nailed down, because we know it is pretty sensitive on that. So we think we've covered that pretty well, and then we're really just trying to do some engineered plans. I've engineered plans for the proposed roadway extension to meet that with the turnaround requirements for the city. And then I've also gone out there and dug test pits to look at the existing roadway construction. You know, me as the PE has to certify that per Mr. Leverrier's comments on that. So I've done that at this point and verified that. So we can write a letter and take care of that. But so that's kind of the quick version of what we're trying to accomplish on that. And I can turn it over to Patrick to address some of the existing lot or the previous lot information stuff.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Patrick Donahue from Five Star Holdings. Originally, this lot was 3 lots for 197. We purchased it from the owner of 197. We purchased the back 2 lots. There was reconfiguration.
Can you just speak into the mic? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Yes,
Well,
better, thank you.
There's a lot better.
Yeah.
There's no in-between with these mics, is there? There was 3 lots there originally. We purchased from the owner of 197. So we originally had 2 separate lots, which would have made it allow us to put a driveway in. There was a lot that was up on the left. It was kind of landlocked from the rest of the property. It was split, I believe, in like 95 or 98 originally. So if you look back through those deeds, you'll find that there were separate lots there to begin with. Our intent was to try to make affordable housing, condo units that, believe it or not, today's world is under $400,000 is affordable housing. I know it's crazy to say, but that was our goal, was to build 2 separate buildings. We worked with codes through the whole process, and we worked with planning and asked different questions of how we could develop this to possibly just do 2 buildings, but maybe down the road do a 3rd building. We sold the properties very quick. They were very popular and priced good for local people to be able to afford them, so we decided to move ahead our plan and try to do them a little quicker, this next unit, than what we planned on in the beginning. So there was no trying to skirt around subdivision. This land is kind of unique the way it was separated, so it makes sense to kind of the way we did it, and we worked with codes during the whole process to make sure we were doing the right process too. So if you have any other questions on that?
Thank you. Jeff?
So just not having all the deeds, so some of the ones that were included in the packet were you're transferring from your holdings to your entity?
Correct.
Of the condominium 1 or condominium 2?
Correct.
And they were pre-existing lots?
They
You
were
did
just
not create them?
readjusted in size. There was an original lot that was 39,000 square feet that was up on the top right-hand corner, and then there was the rest of the property. I think it was another 6 acres or so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Jeff?
If I may, just, one of the public comments was talking about concerns about, the aquifer, the groundwater quality, and you kind of touched on some environmental concerns. And the correspondence that I interpreted was that either adjacent to you or on the lot, there was a previous tannery dump from Saco Tannery. And I'm familiar with one that's further down on Flag Pond, and we've been monitoring that and all those developments in that area and concerned about the plume and how it typically kind of heads like northeasterly. Is there documented
No.
that there was a site?
That was actually brought up by an abutter that I believe wanted to buy the land, and he felt kind of slighted, and he started coming up with this story of that there used to be garbage dumped there. And we had no evidence of that. We dug foundations and a road down through there. That was something that he had brought up, but I think it was more he was scorned towards not being able to buy the property, but there's no evidence of that at all. Our environmental concerns were more just worrying about potential vernal pools in the back or wetlands in the back. We don't have any potential development back there. The city ordinance only allows for 4 structures on a private road. So the most we could ever do is 5 years from now is split off another lot and build a 4th and final building. That is the maximum we can do with that without going through subdivision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? So, on our plan here where it says proposed lot 3, it says proposed, so we're safe to assume that that's a new lot.
That would be the rest of the property, the rest of the 5.94 acres, I believe. So that would be one big lot.
Okay. I'm not, Emily, is it possible for you to throw up that sheet? Looks like page 218 of our packet. So the plan, I guess I'm looking at sheet, I guess it's 1 of 1 by Norse. I see Silver Pine 1, and then I see Silver Pine 2 to the south of that, southwest,
So Silver Pine 2 would be the house on the right-hand side.
as
I believe,
you come
as you come
down
down the road.
Sure.
That was an existing lot, and then the remaining land was an existing lot. So basically, the larger lot, you can do a front lot, back lot by ordinance. So that's what we're creating that third lot with, is the front lot, back lot. Where that's not a previous lot, it has to have 100 feet of frontage to be an actual lot.
Yes, so that's where I'm confused.
So condo number 1, that can technically have a back lot to it because it was a lot of record. So, but you still have to have frontage on the road, so you have to create that by creating the private road, by creating that 100 feet of frontage. So it's basically a front lot, back lot.
Sure, but I guess on the plan here, it seems like there's multiple pieces, and that's
Well, if you
the
look at
confusion.
the original house, it's 197, that's, I don't know if you can put your cursor on, it's all the way, there you go. Is this on? It's too high-tech for me. So this front lot, did that click off on us? This was the original house. The original lot line was like right below the house right here. So when we purchased the property from the owner of 197, we expanded their lot so that it was one lot here. It used to be just there, the lot line. So you had this lot here, you had this lot right where the house was, and then you had the remaining lot. So there were 3 lots. We purchased this strip of property and all this back land and this lot. So you do have 3 lots, but it was always 3 lots. Does that make sense to you?
I think I'm following you.
So originally, this lot in the front where the house was a separate lot. Then there was this lot that was separated, I believe, back in the 90s. The people that owned this property separated that lot.
Sure.
They separated their house too, so they had this lot, this large lot here, and then the smaller lot here were all lots of record. So we purchased everything but the house lot. So there were 2 lots in the back here.
Sure. So of those, of that remaining land, on the drawing I'm looking at, has 4 lots. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
It would be 3 lots on our property. So you would have this lot that was a lot of record, then you would have this larger lot. In Saco's ordinance, you can do a front lot, back lot, 1 separation every 5 years. So that's what we did here, is we separated this lot into 2 lots. And we'll be building, if this is approved, this house here, this duplex here.
Sure.
So it will be 4 lots on that original parcel.
Well, that's the piece that's confusing to me. So
Well, it would be 3 of our property. We just purchased 197 up here is a total separate lot altogether. The people retained ownership of that and kept ownership of that. We purchased the 2 lots in the back, which would be this smaller lot and this larger lot.
Sure. Emily, is it, your page numbers don't match mine. Can you pull up, there's a plan early in my packet. Carrie Lynn has it as well. I'm not sure if other board members are following along with.
No.
No, it's similar to that, but this Mr.
218,
Donahue
page
is,
218.
this is what you're describing, what you just described on the previous plan.
Yes.
There's the one, I see,
You have the 1 lot here,
Yeah.
which was the owner of this lot owned this lot and this lot.
Yep.
We
We
can't,
purchased these two lots.
excuse me, we can't see that from this side
Oh,
of
okay.
the
Yeah, Emily's.
table. So and if you could show it on the, that's 197 then. But you own Silver Pine condominium, the one that's labeled Silver Pine condominium on ours. So, yeah. And I guess what part of the confusion is, at least on the paperwork that we have, under D2, staff and peer review comments, there's a subheading, York Registry of Deeds documents, and you see a plan that shows 3 lots for Silver Pine 1, Silver Pine 2, and proposed
That's
Lot
the one
3.
right there.
And then it
Correct.
shows, right, exactly, this one that shows remaining land. So it shows a total of 4 lots.
So that remaining, well, that's an old plan. I don't know how that even got in there. That was originally, I'll come over and show you on your side, but this house lot is that line was never put in.
Between
never-
proposed
Proposed lot. and
Lot
second-
3 duplex to be built and the back.
Sure, so
Got it.
that's where confusion is.
Got it, okay. Yeah, that's, so there's no separation between what's labeled here as proposed Lot 3 and the back lot, backland. Got it.
There's no separation right here now.
So
So
that,
this would be the proposed, and this would be all the remaining land here with that lot.
okay, now I'm confused again. So it says proposed lot 3. So is that not proposed? Is that, or it's not?
No.
It's not proposed?
No.
So this plan is
That plan, you should just,
irrelevant?
irrelevant to the, yeah.
Okay.
That was something that when we were originally discussing with codes, we were trying to figure out how the land could be laid out, and we weren't quite understanding the ordinance, so it was something that was sent to codes saying, is this something we can do? And it was quickly found out that we couldn't because of the frontage issue.
So Mr. Chair, we actually, if I can,
Yes, please.
we got this from our research on the York County Registry. So this is a recorded plan, and we were using it just to research right title and interest. So we included it in there as, here's what we found regarding right title and interest.
Yes.
It was an earlier plan, but it is a recorded plan, and that's how we came about finding it.
There's actually they backed out of that because the surveying company recorded it by accident. They recorded the wrong plan, so.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure.
So if it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds, it's a lot by right because it's on the books right now. Would that be correct, Emily?
For it to be a lot, we'd have to do a little more research because there are some nuances, but I'd have to do more research to tell you if it's a lot.
I mean, regardless, Mr. Chair, I mean, if they could bring back a map, an updated map that maybe color-coded with the blocks would be very helpful for me in my quest to understand a little bit, would be very beneficial.
So
Shannon has a question.
Shannon, sure.
Yeah, sorry, less of a question than just a statement. So part of the memo regarding this project is a request for a existing conditions plan that should help alleviate some of these confusing matters.
Sure. So I think back to the earlier plan that was up on the screen here. I'm not sure if it's Emily or Shannon here. That was C100, and that's from Trillium, and that is the current, yes. That is the current proposal as part of this application.
Correct.
Okay.
That is as-built up until the point where you can see his line for the addition of the road. And we already built the driveway to private road standards.
From the curb cut at Jenkins Road?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so that was one of my questions. I saw that note, but then I thought I saw someone somewhere in there that said it needed to be upgraded. So is there,
There's no upgrades needed. We built it to standard for the
Okay.
private road ordinance.
I think it was the neighbors who were complaining about the condition.
Mr. Chair, just some clarity on that. The code office wanted to make sure it was very clear that the applicant is requesting site plan review of the entire road. So the entire road is what we are reviewing tonight. And the reason for that is because of how the frontage works for the end of the private road. So it's not just the highlighted section, it's the whole road, even though some of the road has already been built to standards that they will have to like prove and document how the roadway was built to meet private road standards, but the whole road is under review this evening. It's a little bit unclear from how the plan set looks, so I just want to make sure that was noted.
The road is, or it's technically a driveway, is built to this line right after the second duplex right now. So we'd be looking to extend it down this way.
sure. So thank you for the clarity, Emily. That part was clear to me. That was the whole thing. And then everything in gray is new, that's proposed. We're reviewing from Jenkins Road. Okay. I think I'm up to speed. Any other questions or thoughts from board members at this moment? Jim?
So I'm looking at this as we have a application of completeness review to do for site plan for this private road. So, I mean, I understand a lot of Jeff's questions and stuff. I had some of the same questions when I was reviewing the packet initially. But I don't know the extent to which that some of those questions matter. I mean, they obviously matter in the big picture with the code enforcement office and everything, but I think for our purposes, I think we need to focus on the site plan requirements for just the private road, if I'm right. I think I am.
Yes.
So I was trying to match the application completeness checklist with some of the information that was in our original packet, along with some of the information that has been submitted since with our after-the-fact packet. And I think the issues that have yet to be resolved, but I may be wrong, and perhaps Mr. Donahue can tell us, but stormwater, I think, was an issue. I think there was still a question about traffic on the Jenkins Road. I thought existing conditions was important, but I'm not sure if Shannon said that it's not important anymore.
With your permission,
If
I
you,
can
if
answer
you
that.
could, please, sure, quickly. Yeah.
Yes, so an existing conditions plan has not been submitted yet. We have requested that it be submitted.
Okay, so that's outstanding, and then it looks like the very big category of historical, cultural, natural resources, Army Corps of Engineers, Maine DEP, it appears that we need all that information too to be able to deem the application complete. Now, some of this after-the-fact information may have answered some of those questions, but I've been going back and forth trying to see if they've been answered or not. And perhaps we can learn more.
Thank you, Jim.
So existing I know, my voice projects a lot more than Patrick's. Sorry about that.
That's right.
Yeah, tell me about it. So existing conditions plan was the first plan, not the second plan. essentially, that we were showing on that, which is really based on the property and those existing conditions on that. We've shown them on that C100, which encapsulates, you know, the existing pavement, the two existing structures, wetlands, streams, you know, those natural features that we're talking about on that. But we'll certainly work on separating that out to two separate plans to make it a little more clear. Sorry that it's not as clear tonight on that specific issue on that. With regards to environmental, Army Corps, all of that, that's all been submitted. So, you know, and that was submitted, you know, a while back, of course. I don't know how in tune you folks are. I know certainly staff is that with DEP, specifically with all the shoreland issues that we had last year, is pretty backed up. So we deal with that on a constant basis, and we, you know, having to request things multiple times, unfortunately, for them. So they're working on their issues. I think the wetland filling was around 5,000, 5,600 square feet. So working on that piece, and then working on the other natural resources pieces that we have all those letters and information into those agencies at this point, really just waiting on responses that I'm certain that we're going to have for our, you know, upcoming meetings. Hopefully that answers some of those questions.
So it sounds like, in terms of like the very last point, you're telling us that you've already submitted all those letters that need to be submitted to the state and agencies.
Correct.
In Army Corps. And it sounds like in some of the information you've given us, you did provide an existing conditions status, but you could clarify that for us.
It is, but it will be clarified.
Okay. And this, the stormwater, you may have touched upon that, I'm sorry, but I think the city engineer and had some concerns about stormwater drainage off the road, and because some of the neighbors had complained about pools of water, and the drainage wasn't great.
Yeah, so in the proposed plan, what we can say, and I saw in Mr. Laveria's comments, which were good comments on the back, is so at the end of the outflow ditches or the roadside ditches, we can add level spreaders, because we're, you know, basically going into that stream, and I think that's a great idea. We can add those to the for the plan for the next round. I have no issues with that. I believe that'll certainly address, you know, this is a paved road, so we're not going to have like a lot of gravel roads that some people do. You have a lot of sediment that gets into the ditches and plugs the ditches up pretty fast, so we're not going to have any of that. So I think most of what we have for the ditches with the level lift spreaders will work out pretty well. So I agree with Mr. Laveria. We can add those in pretty easily and address that.
And the last one was traffic. I guess the concern was traffic on the Jenkins Road, because obviously more people driving the Jenkins Road. It's a pretty popular road right now.
It is. Kind of that back road kind of cut through if to avoid certain things. I mean, we have two existing units there, two duplexes I'm talking about, and we're adding a third. So, I mean, we're talking about 6 units.
Right.
So, I mean, if we need to do a traffic study on that, I mean, we can certainly add that.
Yeah, I don't know if you need to do that. It seems just adding one more unit shouldn't be that big a deal, but I understand what you're saying, and if it's needed, it's needed, so.
I'll defer to you folks on that.
And I'll defer to the staff and our chairman.
Sure, as long as it satisfies that requirement of, there's a good summary of it here as well. So I think as long as we get information that satisfies that requirement, that should answer some of our questions there. Sorry, is that your? Okay, sorry. Thank you, Jim. Those are good thoughts. Shannon, do you know? I don't remember the address off the top of my head, but the location of the tannery site out there and the proximity to this particular site, because we haven't touched upon that hydrogeologic assessment yet and decided whether or not that's appropriate for this project.
So I'm not 100% sure on the address of the tannery site. I have been there myself. I've walked that site previously. But it is, if you would like me to, I can bring up Google Maps on the screen to show where 197 is and zoom out to approximately where I believe the Superfund site to be.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can, the Superfund site's on Flag Pond Road, right near the overpass, Turnpike overpass.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and
Yeah, this property was, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of rumor and innuendo over the years about the previous owner of 197 bringing home toxic waste because apparently he worked at the tannery. Those are school bus stories as far as I know. I kind of think that somebody might have discovered something
just to touch on
over
that.
the years
if
he had brought home toxic waste from his work site.
Yeah, no, I want to focus on kind of the factual components.
But yeah, the actual tannery pits on that Superfund site's on
Could I
Flag
make
Pond
a
Road,
comment?
right along the turnpike.
Sure.
We had 2 wells installed on the property and had tests done by Nelson Analytical, a big company in southern Maine that does most of the water testing. And the only thing that ever came back was one of them had a high E. coli, which is typical of being near farm sites. And we just had to run bleach through the system a couple of times on one of the houses. But there's been no water tests that have come back with any arsenic or anything like that on that site. The 2 wells and the 2 buildings that are already built.
All right, thank you. That might be a good little document to have. I might throw that in your application material.
Yeah, it's
something that we
actually
could
part
have
of the
that's-
building permit, is it has to pass to get your CO. So we can go back in the file and find where those are and attach them if you'd like.
Yeah, it'd be good for us to review, because if we have questions on that hydrogeologic assessment, if there's historical data from test pits and wells that are already on site that have satisfactory reports, then that might satisfy the board. Otherwise, it's one of those review requirements that we just need to check off. So if that's extra information that we could have during our review, that'd be a great benefit.
And that is part of the occupancy permit, is that has to pass that water test for wells before you can get a CO. So it is in the file for the 2 previous, so we could just get a copy of them and attach them for you.
Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to touch on that after Jim finished his list. We're talking about the site plan review for a private road, but it also says for the additional lot, which to me makes it fall under site plan review. And I agree with you, per section 179, 4.03L, the hydrogeological assessment, specifically item C, says anytime the groundwater is within 48 inches. And if you look at their test pit that they provided dated August 21st, 2024 by Albert Frick, test pit number 1, the limiting factor was 13 inches. So pretty significantly shallow or poor drainage soils. Anybody in the area knows that's a very, very wet, forested wetland area. And, back when I started, a lot of the board members were always talking about that, the aquifer, and we focus on the tannery site a lot, and I think we all recall, most of us have been here for a while, that plume tends to kind of flow more towards Scarborough and the Turnpike. And I'm not necessarily concerned on the tannery for this site, but we do need to be concerned about there is no sewer at this end of the Jenkins Road, and we continue to plop these houses in there, plopping them in there with septic and wells, and at some point you're going to run saturation of what they can filter out of their systems, their independent disposal systems. And E. coli can be from multiple sources, right? So I guess at this point I'm an advocate saying that we need to have that hydrogeological assessment done, if nothing else, for the fact that the groundwater is 2 feet higher than the limit that we're supposed to try to observe. I mean, their data is coming back from their test pit saying It's not at 48 inches, the limiting factor of water, it's at 13. Yeah, 13 inches. So, and that was, yeah, during a very dry season in August. So it's not, ideal building conditions, There's going to be a lot of fill. They're talking about 5,000 square feet of wetland filling impact. So at the very least, if we don't decide tonight for a hydrogeological assessment, I think we should at least host a site walk so we can go and see what it's like. Not necessarily the most ideal time of the year because a lot of things will be frozen, but to get a perspective, there are other houses that have been there for decades that, can be affected when we allow this continued growth without having the, municipal systems and services that are in our targeted growth area. That's what we're always talking about. And I get it, this is right on the cusp, it's on the border. It's what, a half a mile back towards Buxton Road where the sewer stops. But we were kind of at capacity. We reviewed those subdivisions. I think Samuel Marshall was kind of one of the last ones that they had capacity to serve. We just need to be aware of that other half. We're letting that growth go, and they need water quality, and we should be monitoring that very closely. I realize we can say it's just one house, one more house, 2 more units, but collectively that area has been very extensively developed, and we need to be cautious of that to protect all of the citizens, not just these new ones, but the ones that are there currently. Maybe there are some that still have old school dug wells, and that would be very different than what the tests they're going to get from a drilled well for water quality. So I think we should not waive the hydrogeological assessment, but require it for review. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Could you speak for a moment regarding the soil mapping and sort of the geology in that area? You have some information on that? Is that?
Yeah, so we have a mix of course, we have some wetlands, we have the stream, so we have a mix of, scantic and clay soils and drainage, from there back to essentially the highway. But we also have some upland areas that we have that are out behind, and that's the areas obviously that we're picking for these units. We've doing a bunch of these subdivisions. I guess from my perspective, I try to, you want to make sure protect the neighbors with these septic systems, with wells, things like that. And Maine tends to be a very rural state, and so you take a look at the density of some of these developments and what we're dealing with. And so looking at doing one of these studies, we just want to make sure that we're going to get what we're looking for, if that's the case there. I mean, for instance, we look at all these lakes that we have. I live on a small lake, and we're ramming a bunch of these houses and old camps and stuff that people are redoing on 60 by 100 foot lots that were, in there, and they're putting wells and septics on these lots. Now, I'm not saying that's a great idea, but on the other side, that's what's happening. So you're kind of doing that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a lot that still has another 5 acres, of additional area around this, plus the other farms and the other areas that may or may not be developed over time. So we've got a little bit of flexibility with this particular development, but if certainly we need to do a hydrogeologic study, I guess I'd like some specifics on making sure we nail down exactly what you're looking for, and but because just doing a study doesn't mean you're going to get. You're trying to prevent what you're. I always like to have some sort of, I guess, end game of what we're really trying to get versus just getting a report, reading a report. I want to make sure we're solving some sort of problem or inherent problem on that versus just putting out more paper in a report by, a qualified individual like myself or somebody else. So that's always my my thing, because you want to solve whatever issue we're going to deal with, so. But on this case, knowing what I know about other subdivisions that we've been doing and other development we've been doing, I think the extra 5-6 acres around us, that it gives us a little bit of flexibility in this particular case, so.
Thank you. So some of the soils, I guess we're not geologists, but some of the soils that are found on site, sort of this, so for example, that Rainham silt loam, is that RA area there, is that, what's the expectation of how that, I guess, retains water or controls it, or what's the expectation in I guess in that sort of soil?
Yeah, and of course, these lines that you're seeing on this particular study are from, a medium intensity soils study, so you're not going to get all the nuances of the specific upland areas that are shown on our survey.
Sure.
With those sort of things, but so typically the way these soils work, and Maine just has a lot of glacial tills in general, but you have you typically deal with the wetlands that are your storage, your extra storage areas around the streams, things like that. Your scantics that don't drain very well but are going to hold that, and then you start to go into your silty loam, so it means it's going to be somewhat poorly drained versus well-drained soils. So it's in the medium between your well-drained soils and then your poorly drained soils, and basically in there. So, but I mean, as we know, loam, the silty loam does a little bit better with infiltration on that versus a hard clay that just not going to absorb the water. So the silty loam is able to absorb some of that and be able to infiltrate that into the ground. Does that answer your question?
That helps, yes. Thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? Looks like you're thinking there.
Well, I am thinking, and we're hearing about the infiltration and drainage if we're thinking about rain and runoff. I think it's, for our role of protecting the neighboring community and future development is, what is going to be the limits of the plume of the subsurface disposal systems. If we're talking that we only have 13 inches of, any sort of drainable soil before we hit water table, what are you building up? How are you going to limit that? What is the mapping of the types of wells of these existing houses? Some of those houses are 60, 70-year-old houses. Do we have somebody that has a dug well or a driven point, 100 feet away from where one of these disposal systems are going to be? What can we expect for the plume from the disposal systems on this site? Obviously, you're going to try to do your best to locate, and it was noted that you needed 2 test pits per disposal system, so you'd be doing at least 2 more, and then try to work in between there where the well contractor deemed the best place to put the well. And here again, we have the disadvantage because we don't know these upland areas that he's talking about. Are they upland areas of 6 or 7 feet, or are they upland areas of an additional, foot? That's where I think a site walk would be probably helpful for us helping make those decisions. But I think it's real important that, it's about drinking water quality. We have to dispose of the waste, but we also have to have nice potable water for the residents. And that's kind of the end goal for me when we start talking about a hydrogeological assessment, is to make sure that we're protecting the current residents and the new residents. Obviously, there's a ton of water there. How much is going to be drinkable is the key thing.
So to expand that conversation just a little bit more, to kind of get into your question. So basically, the way that this land drains specifically is from Jenkins Road towards the highway. So we're talking about our parcel and then kind of most of the parcels along that. Now, we're not talking about steep grades, but if you look at this specific map and the amount of woods, So the existing houses that are on Jenkins, their plumes are actually coming towards us. I mean, that's, naturally, that's what happens if anything, and they get into the groundwater and they're able to get, any pollutants taken care of through that natural filter. And then our plumes are basically going to keep running, east or, in that direction. So we're going to be back into that groundwater. The systems are going to be built up. You are right about that, you want to build the grade up around the building, and then the systems will be built up a little bit. But that's why they're basically done by a soil scientist with, we're talking about Frick Associates that have gone out there and designed these systems, and that's why, they're not just doing the test bed, say, oh, you can do it here or here, and this is the recommended design on that. But these specific plumes are going to end up going, and we're talking about the plume of this building, and the existing plumes are going to be heading towards basically east, and towards the woods. You get more natural filter, you get a lot of area to be able to dilute that. So if that's what we're talking about, this specific site, then that's what's going to happen for this. So, and the fact that we're not going to get development basically in behind us, because we're talking about major wetlands and stream areas. So it's not like we're talking about a lot of future development that's going to happen there.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Mr. Chair, I don't know enough about hydrogeologic assessments to determine whether one's necessary or not, but if the rest of the board thinks it's important, then, I'll certainly agree. I do think a site walk would be a good idea. It would just, we certainly have heard from several of the neighbors, and so for us to walk along the road and just see, I mean, we had a nice video from one of the neighbors, so I feel like I've already been there, but I think it would be helpful for us to take a look, walk down the road, and just see what's there. As for the application, though, I don't, I'd very much like to say it's complete, but I think it would be helpful if we could get some of those issues cleaned up and the information presented a little more concisely, and before we could say that the application's complete. That's how I'm seeing it right now.
Great, thank you, Jim. Joyce?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Given the high water table, even this fall, and the fact that this is going to be additional well and septic, because there is no public water and sewer here, I think we do need a hydrogeologic assessment. I agree on the site walk, so we can see the lay of the land, and we can tell a lot about the slope of the land. And then nobody's mentioned buffering, anything like that. I don't think we're going to find issues as far as distance to other structures. I don't think there's going to be any issues there. And that may help us as far as existing conditions too, because we do want to know what's there now. And the other issue, I suppose, when we're talking about a site walk is inviting the Conservation Commission to come along also.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other thoughts? So it looks like, I agree, I would support a site walk. Do we have a date in mind, Emily, that we could potentially let that come together?
So, the Conservation Commission is going to meet the 15th, normally. So we could send notices out for something on the 15th, but I just am not sure if a morning meeting could work. Or we could do something on the 14th in the morning.
I think the morning meetings have been working. I think, it seems to be working for most of us.
So I would think
Very
the
late.
14th or 15th in the morning would probably be the best option.
Morning on the 15th probably works best for me. And we would make sure we have an existing conditions plan updated for you before the site walk. And then we'd probably, I'll talk to our surveyor, and we can work with Patrick, trying to at least establish some stakes out there or some sort of pins to show you where the end of the kind of roadway turnaround would be as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And Emily has a little list that she can provide you as well, but little 11 by 17s would be great as well to walk around and kind of, like you said, hit some of those stakes and those important points would be great.
Sure. The roadway is pretty, I mean, it's just paved, so it's in pretty good shape.
Sure. So morning of the 15th, does 7:30, you want to do another 7:30, if that works?
Is it possible to do 7:45? Because technically we don't start till 7:30.
Sure.
Thank you.
7:45 would be fine.
Can we just make sure there's no wind and cold? Like tonight?
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I know.
It'll end up raining,
Oh.
and it's going to be worse.
Every time I do that, forget about it.
Great, so January 15th, 25 at 7:45 a.m. So I think we've covered, I know Jim's mentioned it a few times, I think we've been clear about that. Some of the, as you mentioned, the updated existing conditions plan, with that, you'll have your proposed plan. I know you've answered a few of the question, one, waste disposal. Maybe a note, we've seen that on the plans as well sometimes, so maybe clarity there.
I'm sorry, a note regarding what?
The waste disposal.
So
that's
specifically, when you say waste, you mean solid waste? Or do you mean
yes,
sanitary?
yes, solid. So there was a note that talked about city trash pickup, and I think a note like that in lieu of showing, so there's clarity that we're not looking for, expecting.
So note on a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not expecting a dumpster with a trash enclosure and private pickup sort of thing.
Yeah, understood. It's going to, basically, the existing 2 units going to follow, the 3rd unit's going to follow that.
Sure.
But we'll have a note on that.
We talked about the traffic.
Is there some sort of determination on traffic of what we need, what you're looking for?
There is, and I think Shannon can help provide some of that information.
Okay, thanks.
Shannon can confirm, but I don't believe this is going to trip a full traffic movement permit. Definitely not a traffic movement permit, but no official traffic study or anything like that. I don't think we're going to hit those warrants, but
Okay. And then maybe we can talk about the hydrogeologic study, maybe on the site walk a little bit more.
yeah, I was going to skip that one for a second. Circle
Okay.
back to maybe some.
I mean,
maybe
I
some
know,
easier
I know what
ones.
you guys are pushing for, that's great, but it'd be great for us to kind of all look at it, look at the slope, look at the conditions before we, because that's going to be it's going to be, a fairly intense effort on our part.
Yeah, we understand. Going through, I guess we have landscape requirement, I think addressing that in a narrative fashion could work as well.
Okay.
Lighting, Emily, did we have any comments from, or, sorry, I keep saying Emily, I have it, Shannon, I'm sorry, from staff or Parks and Rec about, I know it's a private road, but any comment from them on street trees or street lights or anything like that, just for all of our records? I didn't notice anything, but
I have not received any comments regarding street trees. Generally, when it comes to private roads, street trees aren't required as long as a nice buffer is maintained at like the entrance of the road,
Sure.
which is something that we could observe on the site walk.
okay. Utility information, I think we touched upon that. Plans, that was responded to. So I think there's a few here. The stormwater, we touched upon that. You answered some of the other questions with the other governing bodies. The hydrogeologic assessment, we've heard from board members, and there seems to be some support on that. Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have done a scenario where we've done a site walk, we've had conversation, we understand what's involved in those assessments and working through them. So we can talk to the board and make a determination if we want to review on site, and then make a decision. Obviously, we can't direct during a site walk. We'd have to make that decision once we're back to a meeting. The Samuel Marshall project, we had a similar discussion. And I've been trying to think of the name of that system that they installed. Do you recall the name of that?
Oh, the Crescent Woods. Yep. So we did require a hydrogeologic assessment there, and nitrogen removal systems, I believe, is what they were required to do, provided that they still couldn't. So when they had some issue with there not being enough groundwater during their reviews, their study period. It was a pretty dry period. So they had recommended a condition about nitrogen removal systems that you all agreed staff could remove if we in fact get word back from the professionals and the peer reviewers that those systems are not needed.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. You have a fantastic young memory.
So was that a case where you didn't have enough water?
So it was very,
Which is what I just went through on another one where they were concerned about enough water, and that's not what we're talking about here. So that's why I want to be clear about what we're trying to get at.
Exactly. That's where I'm trying to get to. So that project had some test pits done, and then as part of the assessment, they were waiting for more water to get a good review and a good assessment. And the area, there was, I believe, test reports and test pits that showed high groundwater in some areas, which is where we moved with that decision. But then to do the test and the assessment effectively, there wasn't much water. So that's where this system came into play. So I guess where I'm going with the discussion is there's high groundwater here, but to the applicant's question is what's the board again going to look for, and we'll probably end up deferring to you to provide a system and show that it has high quality water and that the systems – appropriately mitigate and control and septics and all that stuff. So that's really sort of what I'm getting at and want to give the applicant good direction on with the hydrogeologic assessment. If we make that decision, they provide it, they give us a report back, and then just to make sure that we're clear as to what the expectation, what we're looking for after that. That's all. I know it can get confusing quick.
That's, if I can, that's why I asked the question before,
Sure.
because most of the hydrogeologic studies that we do is because of lack of water for these subdivisions. So that's why I wanted a little bit of clarity about what we're trying to get to, if it's an actual plume, because we have tests of existing wells that we already have available and things like that. So I wanted to just make sure we're clear about
Sure.
exactly what you just said.
Sure, and with that, Emily or Shannon's pulled up some of the requirements in the ordinance here, and it does talk about providing data from existing groundwater quality and from other test wells or neighboring properties. So it seems like you have some good information, some historical information that you could use to date, but that's sort of, it's a good list there, but Jim, you have a thought?
Well, I was just wondering the extent to which it's hydrogeologic assessment is helpful when, I mean, certainly it could be important for this extra building that they would like to build there, but is that sort of assessment really essential in determining whether or not to approve a private road? You know, and Jeff sounds like he has an answer to that, but I don't know if it is really helpful to us to have one of those assessments if what really we're just supposed to be deciding whether or not to approve the road or not.
Yep, thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yep.
I would agree if it was just before us as a site plan for the private road, but our description says it's a site plan for a private road to allow frontage to make a buildable lot. So it's hand in hand. We're making a buildable lot only if they can do the private road. So we have to do two pieces. You know, there's like I said, there's a ton of information here about what we have, the existing site plan. We don't know where the existing drinking water supplies are within 200 feet of the property boundaries that we're discussing. That hasn't been provided to us. That's data that they can run with. You know, the drafters of our ordinance came up with the limiting factor of water if we're above 48 inches. That was a particular concern. I would assume that's because of the pluming effect, not so much the quantity of water that's available, because we have another code that says we can't have dug wells. They have to be artesian wells, so we're not using the same water source here. It's very unique that you brought up the Crescent Woods off of Samuel Marshall Drive, because that was one we waited for. And Samuel Marshall, when we reviewed that, had high water, but their stormwater worked so well, it had helped drain a lot of that. And if you look at the dating, when they were standing before us in August, when they didn't have water, that was the same date that they did their test pit, and they had a limiting factor at 13 inches down the road. So you were starting to see some of the effects, right? We allow 13 houses to go in, and we do all of this stormwater control. It greatly changes the dynamics of what's going on in the ground. All that forested wetland, you don't see that as much, right? They bring in, they fill, they raise their streets, they raise their houses, they get better runoff. They're bringing it to a containment pond for it to control leach, much better soils than what's existing. There's a lot of dynamics that change. We just need to be aware that we're protecting them. So let's get a site walk in, let's get the existing conditions to meet our requirements. You know, per article, you know, 179, 403, that whole article, and then we can decide. We can decide if we want to do the hydrogeological assessment after a site walk, but I think we need all this information because that's our role, is to protect the existing constituents as well as the new development. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? No. I agree. I can support that direction as well. Gather more information as we've discussed, site walk, discussion. At that point, I'm sure we'll have some more input from city engineer as well. Yeah. So with that, so Emily, if we have a site walk on the 15th, and then do we have room on another agenda to continue? Shannon? Shannon's running the show.
So the next time we'd have room is the second meeting in February, unless you want to stack the January 21st, because I added what we added tonight, and we're already pretty full for that agenda. And February 4th is a reserve training night.
You know me, I don't like pushing things further away. Do you think the 21st is an appropriate date to kind of compile and gather some of these remaining items? And
Yeah, I think we have most of the other items. Sounds like the biggest item is just separating the existing conditions, really, at this point, is what I'm hearing.
so we'll have met, I guess, can we look to try to, you said stacked?
That's fine. It'll be the 7th application, and we have that night the large Waterfall Drive one, as well as the Bradley Street one is coming back. But we can certainly put it on and see if the board gets to it.
If we, in the unfortunate event, if we post that item and if it appears we're not going to make it to any item on the agenda, if we table it during that meeting, is that remind me, is it trigger renoticing again, or?
So no, if you announce it publicly and make it clear what date you're moving it toward, then it doesn't re-trigger a notice. We don't re-notice for every time it gets moved.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if, it sounds to me like we're gonna do application completeness review, continued application completeness review on January 21st. And I don't know if we're doing a public hearing or not. So if we're only doing application completeness review, there wouldn't be a notice.
There would not be a notice?
No, we wouldn't have another notice. So we send out a notice when we receive the application, and then we'll send out a notice about the site walk. So we'll send the site walk notices tomorrow morning.
But then you would notice on the public hearing?
Yes, on the public
that's
hearing
scheduled.
night, whenever that's scheduled, or for the public hearing night.
Well, I guess I'd like to try to at least get it on the agenda for the 21st. And if the stars don't align, we can make an adjustment for the second meeting in February. Is it possible for the, I'm overly complicating it. Let's just go with that. Let's go with that. All right, any other board member thoughts or questions? Additional information or direction for the applicant? I think we've given good direction.
Can I just run through my list,
Yes.
Mr. Chair? I have an updated existing conditions plan, a note on the plan regarding solid waste, traffic information, like in a memo, please provide like a narrative explaining what we think might be the ITE traffic counts or traffic trip number for this. I know it's very small, but just something to fulfill the application standards.
Yep.
Stormwater updates regarding the plan set and in response to any engineering review comments. Landscaping, provide a narrative explanation. Is there anything else that we are missing here?
Just the well testing reports for the existing 2 lots. is what I have in my notes.
Yeah, I think it would be good to throw that in there. That's,
Mr. Chair, respectfully, though, can we, well, I guess you can't, can we get water tests from the other wells that are within 200 feet of their boundary? And that might help form our decision about the hydrogeological assessment? Or is that something that they wouldn't have right title interest to get if the owners don't want to give it to them?
It's a little more records. Trying to find the records is usually the issue with that. We could locate the wells and show them on existing plans, but trying to get that if they don't have them in city records, that's the issue specifically. And they're a matter, if they're in the city records on building permit, they're a matter of public record of thing. So, but if you don't have the records, go back that far, that's gonna be a challenge.
I guess to your question, I think it would be a good idea for the applicant to provide as much information on the wells as we could. They have some already. If they can gather more, I think that's a good start to add to our discussion. And then we can go from there. So, yes, I think, Emily, that's, Shannon, I think that's everything. So, board members, an official motion, I think.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to continue this matter of application completeness until January 21st.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue to January 1st with a site walk on January 15th. Great.
Thank you all for your help, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to our next item, our general correspondences. Any general correspondences this evening?
No, thank you.
And then from there, any planning department updates or discussions?
Sure, I have a few things here, if you don't mind. We continue to work on the ordinance amendments, red lines, you will see them soon. Housing Action Plan is now underway. We're under contract with VHB. So they're our consultant that we selected out of an RFP process with several staff members and departments involved. So we're looking forward to getting that underway. The Transportation Master Plan, we're working on a community update for the Traffic Safety Committee meeting, which is scheduled for January 16th. And we will have already invited the Bike Ped Advisory Committee to sit in on that, listen to the data collection efforts that the consultants have undertaken so far, as well as hearing from them as to the next step of that process. Last night's council meeting, Park North Phase 2 City Street Acceptance was approved, so we'll be working with Elliott Chamberlain to finish up the final paperwork details as far as getting it signed over to the city for what the city accepted. And then the council denied the 148 Flag Pond Road petition request, so they were in agreement with your report to them in general.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all I have. Thank you.
And to board, any planning board comments? Item 11. Everyone looks refreshed and invigorated after the holiday, ready to move forward. All right, if there are no further thoughts or comments, we'll move to adjourn at 9:41 PM. Thank you.